Welcome to Lifting Girls Up with Girls Inc. of New York City. My name is Tiffany Martinez, Academic Advisor with Girls Inc., and today we're interviewing the inspiring Alyssa Milano.
Hi everyone, I am Tara. I'm 17 years old and I have a strong passion for helping others and advocating for social justice.
Nice to meet you, Tara.
And my name is Nayel. Like Tara, I'm also 17 years old. I love listening to music and I hope to one day become a forensic psychiatrist.
Wow.
Firstly, we wanted to ask you, how do you embrace the qualities about yourself that other people might see as flaws?
Mm. I think, for me, it's taken me a long time to sort of be comfortable in my own skin and not really worry what other people think, or what they might consider to be flaws. Um, and so I think, learning more about what gives you happiness and contentment and feeling fulfilled, like a feeling of fulfillment, are the things that have allowed me to accept, all of who I am, and appreciate the stuff that I feel good about more so than the things that other people might find to be flawed.
It's all about that good feeling, and I love it.
Yeah, and
Fulfillment.
what gives you that good feeling? For me, it's being an activist and fighting for things that I believe in. Um, and I think that supersedes anything that I would feel that other people would think of as a flaw. Also, I mean, I think resilience is a really big, important part of learning to accept who you are as a person. The more you overcome, and the more you can recognize that resilience and that fortitude and that strength, then you really wind up loving that part about you.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you have a really firm sense of who you are and you're grounded in who you are, other people's opinions don't really knock you down as easy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely it still happens, but I think, as long as you could find those, your humans, your people in your life that build you up, and that, love you for who you are, and you continue on the path of fulfillment. um, I think those things supersede, whatever anyone might think of you. I get a lot with trolls on social media because I'm so vocal about political issues, and they try pretty hard to cut me down, but I feel like the things that they see in me as flaws are the things that I have learned to really love about myself. um, and that feeling is more important than their opinions.
Okay, thank you. So just to kind of feed off of what you just said, what is some advice for taking care of your own mental health and how do you keep moving forward?
Moving forward is sometimes a tough one for me, and sometimes I have to break it down to its most simplest terms, which is, one foot in front of the other. And sometimes, because I have anxiety, and I've had some trauma in my past. So sometimes all I could really manage is one foot in front of the other. Um, and also, I think the way to move forward through things is to really kind of dissect and examine what from your past might keep you from moving forward. And once you're able to recognize that and kind of dissect it and figure out what it is, I feel like you're able to heal. And once you've healed, I think moving forward is the only option. It's the only way to go. Um, and that obviously fluctuates throughout your lifetime. There'll be times where it'll be something that's super, super easy for you to do. And then times that, sometimes you have to go back into the trauma and back into the pain to be able to recognize it and know that it's not your fault and that we can heal ourselves and move through it.
Yes, thank you. I always say like healing is not linear and it's definitely not easy at all, but as long as we continue on that path, that it makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, and the recognition that healing needs to be done, I think, is half the battle. Because when I was real good in, my late teens and my early 20s on putting on a facade of like, you know what? I am totally fine. I have nothing that I need to deal with. I'm strong. But then, the longer things kind of stay stagnant in your being, and that trauma and that pain sort of doesn't move around but stays in like one stuck space, that's, I think, when it's hard to move through something. But as long as things are moving in your body and you're trying to work it out and through, like I always say, the only way out sometimes is in, because you got to sort of go inside of yourself and reflect. And as long as you're able to acknowledge that healing needs to be done, I think that's half the battle.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I also had a question about, the fact that this past year has definitely been difficult for all of us with the pandemic and, political unrest. And in the midst of all of that, have you been implementing any new self-care to kind of yourself like in peace?
So at the beginning of the pandemic, I decided that, well, first of all, I had COVID. So that was awful. And that was almost a year ago. And once I felt strong enough to start, going back to work and lobbying for things and advocating for things, I realized like I needed to figure out a way to escape the pressures of what was happening, because I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. And there are definitely days where I lie in bed after I put the kids to sleep and I'm like, what are we living through right now? And how incredible is it that as human beings we can sort of adapt to the situation? Thank God. Even though it's so hard and so difficult, we are like, I look at my kids and I'm like, wow, my son went from being on 4 sports teams, totally active life, to now, doing everything on Zoom and not being able to see friends. And and it's hard for him, but I'm shocked at how well we adapt to situations just as human beings. And I think that that's a gift that we all innately have. But there's one thing I've wanted to do my entire life that I've never really taken the time to learn how to do, because it always felt, especially after you have kids, it just feels selfish to spend any time on yourself. And also, I think a little bit of the activist mentality is that too. Like, there's so much to fight for. What am I gonna? Oh, I think I have to sneeze. It's the truth. My mom always says, if you sneeze in the middle of saying something, it means it's the truth. So yeah. So I have always had this thing of like, I feel guilty. I feel guilty spending time doing things that I like to do or exploring things that I might like to do. But during the pandemic, I started watercolor painting. And let me tell you, it has completely changed my life. It's something I look forward to at the end of the day. It's something that is so fluid, because the way, if anyone watercolors, it's like the water goes down and the paint goes through it, and you can see the paint sort of spreading out, and you have to learn how the paint is going to move through different consistencies of paper. And it's just been such a first of all, to do anything from scratch after a certain age is always really frustrating, because I just expect to be good at everything right off the bat, right? Because I'm like, everything I've done forever and I'm good at it.
Mm-hmm.
So to start from scratch and say, you know what, even if I'm really bad at this, I'm just going to keep at it every single day. And I do it every single day. And I love it. I love it so much. And it's become so wonderfully meditative for me, just to not think about what's on the news, or the fear of getting sick again, or someone that I love going through what I went through. So yeah, watercolor painting, which is, it's so funny, but I love it. I love it. Makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important. Self-care is important. It really is. And it's important not to feel guilt, because that's a whole other added stressor that we don't necessarily need. So if we're able to just allow ourselves that time to be quiet, to be alone with ourselves, and see where your mind takes you.
Mm-hmm. I love watercolor painting. I love all
Right?
forms of painting. And I started painting when I was 18. So again, like not like super young, definitely not a prodigy. And having to just be okay. I had an art class, and I just had to be okay with the fact that I was the worst in the class. And that's
Yeah.
okay. And that's fine.
Yeah, and it could be frustrating, and but to see growth every day, to sit down and work at something again, and work at getting good at it, and practice, and being kind to yourself if something goes wrong, because watercolor is very unforgiving. As it's either it can go very, very right, or very, very wrong very
Paper
quickly.
buckles.
Yeah, like all of a sudden the colors can get all melded together and look like, I don't know, poo.
Meditation, people, I mean, although I do think there's a lot of power in sitting down in stillness and being comfortable with stillness, meditation can look like so many things.
Yes.
Meditation can be anything that's repetitive. It could be running, it could be jogging, it could be painting, it could be coloring. And so I
Exactly.
really love that you brought that up, because I think some people have a hard time with just sitting still and
Yeah.
then trying to find meditation, and then they get mad at themselves because they're not able to get to that state.
Right. But or they don't recognize that too takes practice.
Mhm.
Just
That's
like
practice.
painting, or just like, there, I think when you start a meditation practice, that's why they call it a practice, but also it's just, it is, if our brains are used to always going, it's very hard to quiet that, which is why it's so really important. Right? Everything that's hard is important to try to do and fight through.
Yeah, because if everything's easy, we're not growing. We're not
Exactly.
learning.
Exactly.
So we want to ask you about your growth and your growth through life, and maybe how has your inner battles changed as you grew into womanhood?
Mm. I'd love to say it got easier, but I think it got harder because the um my childhood, the trauma that I went through as a young woman, I just never really dealt with it. And I didn't deal with it until after the Me Too tweet went viral, and I started getting a lot of comments from women and girls telling me about their Me Too stories. And it just was although I felt blessed to be given, people's trauma and secrets, it was really triggering for me. So I think in a way, growing up, um, you you think that when you're not sort of dealing with things that you don't need to deal with them. But I'm pretty sure that any sort of trauma or difficulty or anything that you go through in your life, you if you don't deal with it, you're gonna have to deal with it eventually. So so that realization was something that I couldn't run away from it anymore, and I had to face the things from my childhood and my past that were hard. So yeah, and I think that all of that, you wind up getting a resilience and a sense of pride, um, because you were able to overcome it in a way that wasn't damaging to other people, where you weren't continuing the hurt, because I really believe that hurt people. And so in order to really uh, expand past pain into healing and acceptance, I think is a big part of where I am now, and just to recognize resilience. I think so. I get the question, what would you tell your younger self, all the time? And I think I would tell her two things. One is there's no life without struggle and without pain. So just prepare yourself that in life there are going to be moments that are going to be really, really hard. And then the second thing is, but don't worry, because you're resilient and you're going to come out of it okay. All the pain that you might fear as a young person, and be worried about, whether it be heartache or disappointment or abandonment or any of those issues that we have, we're all strong enough to get through it, especially if we, have incredible organizations like Girls Inc. or have, team of people who love you and can help you through it. Which I don't know that I necessarily always recognized. Like, I always felt like asking for help meant that I was burdening people with my own things. But I don't think there's a person on the planet that loves you that isn't willing to help you through hard times. And they might not have the answers. Usually they don't. Usually the answers are all inside of us. So don't ever underestimate your resilience.
Okay, yeah, I definitely do agree with what you just said. And I think that you talking about first recognizing what you've gone through and then like realizing that you do have others, like family members, friends, whatever the case may be, whoever you have in your corner to help you out with these situations. And I also think that another method that a lot of people turn to are like words of affirmation. And so I just wanted to ask you, like, when you hear the phrase "you are enough," what are your thoughts?
When I hear the phrase "you are enough," I think it's something that we need to instill more in our young people, because the way social media makes you feel, and it's not just about like, the filters to make you skinnier and clear up your skin and erase all your wrinkles. It's not just that. It's the stickers and the bells and whistles and the editing and the quick shots and the slow-mo and the voiceover. It becomes that your thoughts or your photo is not enough to either entertain people or to get them to love you, or just things like, I want to grab a tissue real quick because my nose is running. Just things like that are so prevalent. And I look at my daughter who's 6, and she's already, she's like, "Mama, you put the highlight up here. You put the highlight up here when you do your makeup, and you put and I'm like, you're 6. First of all, don't need highlight. Mommy doesn't need highlight. None of you, you are enough. So I think with social media, it's that phrase and that affirmation has taken on a whole new connotation about what is enough.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that you mentioned that comment about the highlight too, because it's like I think it's okay to have a little bit more glow, but you have to recognize that you already have that glow within you first, right? Like you already have to recognize that that's it. Standard level, you're
Yeah.
set. You're good.
Yeah, right,
Anything else is a
exactly. Like
bonus.
at the very bottom, I have the glow.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think um, we have to instill in our young girls and women how they're more than enough, just the way they are.
Thank you.
Yes. And, since we are on the topic of like women and how, we kind of have these like expectations and, beauty standards, we have to look a certain way, act a certain way, can you tell us an experience where you felt it was a disadvantage to be a woman and how were you able to overcome it?
So it's interesting because you all may be too young to remember any of this, but there was a time in my industry, in the entertainment industry, where if women were to voice their opinions about, creative direction or script or dialogue, that we would be labeled difficult or a diva. And yet, men would be total disasters on a set, not only, sexually harassing people, but, making demands for whatever wheatgrass juice, whatever those demands are, and nobody ever batted an eyelash about like, well, he's kind of the diva, right? Like he's kind of the difficult one. And I think that creatively in those instances, being a woman was at a disadvantage, even to the extent that I think that certain projects suffered or weren't as great as they could be. I mean, you look at the women who are creating TV and film now, and it's so good. And had we, as young women, been given those opportunities to sort of, vocalize our opinions creatively, I feel like we would have been making beautiful stories from different perspectives long ago. So really, I think that the industry had to shift, and we're seeing that throughout a lot of industries. I'm just using it, my industry as an example. The industries had to shift from Me Too and not being able to, and Time's Up, and not being willing to stand for discrimination or being treated differently than our male counterparts. And I think socially we've gotten there where women are listened to a lot more. We're put in positions of power. We have big offices now, and we're CEOs and directors and writers, and it's so awesome. And now I think we need to take it a step further and legislate based on not discriminating based on gender. So I'm a big proponent of trying to get the Equal Rights Amendment passed, which basically would put the weight of the Constitution behind women and girls, which I think a lot of people don't realize that women are not mentioned in the Constitution except for the right to vote, which is the 19th Amendment. It's the only thing we're guaranteed in the American Constitution. And lawyers have been able to like manipulate and work the 14th Amendment to also include women. But obviously, if that was 5 amendments before the 19th Amendment, there's no way they were like, yeah, let's not discriminate against women, but they can't vote. So the Equal Rights Amendment just says that we have the weight of the Constitution behind us that would make it against the law for anyone to discriminate based on sex. And hopefully what happens, sex and gender, and hopefully what happens from that is that, we start to see equal pay for equal work. And I think, like I said before, we're already seeing the social change. More women are running than ever before for positions in our government and on a local, state, and federal level. Sorry, I don't know who's beeping me. But yeah, so I think that is the next step. But I'm super hopeful. I'm super hopeful that in our lifetimes we will see that get easier. Like I've always felt that women need to work a little bit harder to have this, or to garner the same type of respect, or even just affirmation that they're doing a good job. And I think that that's getting much better, which is exciting. So the industry changed. It wasn't like I was able to do anything about it, but the industry has changed. Things have shifted, which is lovely.
Yeah, so hearing about the industry and things, how I'm not gonna say they're not the same now, but how like semi-drastically different they were. Like women were often, I don't want to say silenced, but almost like they were not treated the same as men. And I think it's like super unfortunate, because we should all be treated the same. We should all, there should be no discrimination based off of a body parts.
There should be no discrimination based on anything.
Nothing.
How about that?
Right.
Nothing. I mean, and that's the whole thing, is like, as an activist, as a feminist, like the whole fight is really to be able to diminish any type of hierarchy.
Right.
And so, that's what we all have to fight for, is that there is no hierarchy.
Yes, I definitely do.
Yeah, the hierarchy is what I think hurts us across the board.
Exactly. Gender, race, ethnicity, ability status, so many things.
Yeah. And I think that being a part of Girls Inc., starting in my sophomore year of high school, I think Girls Inc. does a really, really, really good job at promoting the fact that regardless of what you look like, regardless of anything, like everyone is the same. Like we should all be treated the same. We should all treat everybody with respect. We should all treat everyone with kindness.
Dignity.
Right, exactly.
Dignity.
There's no reason as to why anybody is treated poorly because of anything. And our motto at Girls Inc. is to be strong, smart, and bold. So what does it mean for you to be strong, smart, and bold?
I think it's to use your voice. I think it's to feel confident enough that when you see injustices, that you use your voice to fight against those injustices, and you continue to be the voice for the voiceless. I think, it is, we tell, or we told little girls, or kids in general, kids should be seen and not heard, and sit like a lady, and all of these things that society is sort of conditioned into what it means to be a young woman and a young girl. And I think because of that, we are a lot more trepidatious. We're just a lot more concerned with how people think what we're about to say will impact people. And we've got to get over that. We have to all be, strong enough to use our voice when we see something that we know is wrong.
We are so grateful that you are using your platform to spread this message of just recognizing everyone's humanity and advocating for what you believe in and
Thank you. I feel the same way about you
centering
all.
fulfillment, doing things that you care about. Thank you. Thank you so much. I actually wanted to ask you a question that you mentioned that you actually went back earlier, which was any advice you would tell your younger self. And I know you answered that question already. So if you have any other tips or um, any pieces of advice for, our young women, this next generation of pioneers, I would love if you can use this time to do so. And if not, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, using your voice, knowing that you're enough the way that you are, and just acknowledging and being okay with the idea that no life is without suffering. Um, and I think that those things are so very important. And you're right, like through suffering comes the most growth. So it's not something that we necessarily need to fear. It might not feel comfortable as we're going through it, but I would just hope that every young woman who is watching this interview, and you're all so wonderfully brilliant and lovely, and thank you so much for this opportunity, but I just hope that everyone watching just feels and knows in their heart that they can overcome anything. It doesn't matter where you come from, what your situation was, socioeconomically, who you are, or where you came from. We can all overcome everything. Human beings are really resistant. And I just want everyone to remember, even in their darkest days where you're like, this hurt so much. I didn't expect any of this to hurt this much. Remember that you will get through it, and you will be stronger and more beautiful on the other side, internally beautiful on the other side of that pain. And it's time that we're honest about that. Like we've grown up with generations and generations of women having to pretend like everything's okay all the time. And that what we think doesn't matter as much. And I think it's important that we start to make our young people aware and prepare them and give them the tools to get through hardships, to give them the tools to get through disappointment or heartache. I certainly didn't have the tools when I was younger. I feel very lucky to have the tools now, but start creating those tools for yourself. What makes you feel good? What makes you feel like, you're in a meditative state? What brings you fulfillment and joy? And how the mind and body is truly connected, and what it means to dance it out.
Sometimes that's all
When
you
we
have
think
to
of
do. I tell my young people during our
yeah,
check-ins when they're going through a really, really difficult time, like just play a song you really love and just start dancing. Like you don't want to go outside and go on a run.
well,
You don't want to sit and meditate. Put on a song you love and just dance it out.
right, because it gets the energy moving through your body, and there's no stagnation. It's why, Native Americans or indigenous or people that live in tribes all across the world, at the end of a hard day, or even millions of years ago, the end of a hard day, people congregated and danced. They danced around a fire. They danced and told stories. They moved that energy through their body. And, I think when we think of healing, we so much think about like therapy, and no, but so much of it is about like moving that pain through your body. And if you don't, your body holds on to it. and that's where the term pain in the neck came
I
from.
I love that you bring up therapy and then also dancing because it's holistic, right? Healing is holistic. You're not going to find healing in just one practice. Therapy is very important, but so is doing things on your own that make you happy, finding those activities that make you happy, being in community.
How about
Sometimes
just breathing? How about
healing,
just breathing?
breathing, smiling, sitting still and smiling.
Just
We
take
are
a breath.
Yes. Thank you so much, Alyssa. And thank you, everyone, for joining us with Lifting Girls Up with Girls Inc. of New York City. Stay tuned for more conversations with special guests.